Talk over whether multiple theories of origin should be taught in Hawaii classrooms is stirring controversy at tonight's Board of Education meeting. Good evening, I'm Paula Akana.
And I'm Dan Cook. KITV4 News reporter Tasha Kabachagawa live at that meeting with the very latest. Tasha?
Dan and Paula, we're now going into our third hour of testimony here at the neighborhood, or at the Board of Education meeting, I should say. People testifying both for and against a proposal to introduce creationism into science classes throughout Hawaii's public schools. Creationism is the biblical theory that God created all mankind. Right now, the theory of evolution is what's taught in science classes, but the debate is over whether to introduce other theories of origin into the classroom. Over 60 people, almost 60 people I should say, lined up this evening outside the Board of Education meeting room to voice their concerns about the issue of creationism. Board of Education members say they've also received dozens and dozens of emails about the topic and plan to hear and consider everyone's testimony. Inside the meeting was also packed with people. One by one, each person was given 3 minutes to state their position. We heard a range of opinions from parents, teachers, administrators, and university professors to scientists and pastors. Here are a few of those comments.
In reality, I believe they're both viable theories of origin. Both make unverifiable assumptions. They both draw conclusions by looking at the same evidence. It just happens they draw different conclusions.
Because it's plainly unconstitutional. And if you pass the policy, you will face a lawsuit and you will lose the lawsuit.
Asking a scientist to give equal time to creationism is like asking us to give equal time to astrology, or to the notion that the earth is flat, or to the theory that Elvis designed the Great Pyramids of Egypt.
This I speak as a pastor. I don't want your teachers teaching my kids about religion. They may be very good at the other things that they do. That's my biz, not theirs. Thank you.
We spoke with several of the board members and School Superintendent Paul LeMahieu earlier this afternoon. It seems that most of them are in agreement that creationism does not belong in the science curriculum, but should be honored and respected in the classroom in general, possibly as a social studies class or as an elective course, but not necessarily a requirement. We're told this meeting is expected to go on to midnight, possibly a little later. They have not said, the school board members have not said whether they will make a decision on it, but we are expecting that tonight. But again, this looks like it will go on for several more hours, considering there are close to 60 people who are testifying tonight for this hearing. Reporting live, Dan and Paula, back to you.
All right, Tasha, thank you very much. Now, earlier tonight, we asked you the question, should creationism be taught in Hawaii's public schools? 30% of those, or I should say 36% of those of you responding at the hawaiichannel.com said yes, 61% said no, and 3% were undecided. We want to thank all of you who participated in our survey.
Residents packed the Board of Education tonight to voice their concerns about the proposed teaching of creationism. That story is just part of our Channel 2 News at 10. Next.
This is the Channel 2 News at 10 with Joe Moore, Hawaii's #1 news.
Residents packed the Board of Education meeting tonight to voice their concerns about the proposed teaching of creationism. And the committee redrawing the legislative district hits a snag by counting military residents. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for our Channel 2 News at 10 on this Thursday, the 2nd of August. Dozens of people are testifying before the Board of Education tonight over a controversial measure that critics say would open the door for the teaching of religion-based creationism in high schools. Ramsey Wharton reports live from the Department of Education building on Punchbowl Street. Ramsey?
Joe, testimony continues at this moment, and it has been a very lively evening inside as regular citizens, we've had teachers, scientists, and of course attorneys addressing the board. Now, much of this debate has actually been academic in nature, but as we're told, much of, or actually when I was there, much of the testimony was actually rejecting the recommendation, urging the board to reject that recommendation that is being added to new science performance standards. Now, this means or suggested that 9 through 10 students in those grades would actually be learning about multiple theories of origin. Dozens of people lined the hall outside the BOE boardroom and crammed inside to voice their opinion on the controversial recommendation. Board member Matsumoto addressed the public and the board before the testimony began.
The committee never intended on creationism to be taught, nor did I intend.
But her words did not ease critics of the proposal.
If you mandate that creationism be taught in science classes, you will be putting Hawaii in the same league as theocracies like Iran and Afghanistan.
And the American Civil Liberties Union made it loud and clear they feel the recommendation violates the separation of church and state.
Because it's plainly unconstitutional. And if you pass the policy, you will face a lawsuit and you will lose the lawsuit.
But a supporter urged the board to move forward.
Some say that it doesn't belong in the science classroom. I disagree. I think there are many books and magazines that document the scientific evidence for intelligent design and sudden creation, if someone is willing to look for them.
Creationism, whether it is based in the Bible or other religious texts, should be taught when appropriate as part of literature, history, or religion, but not as part of the science curriculum.
No accredited university or college in the United States teaches alternate theories of origin. Why should the Hawaii Public Schools?
But it was a teacher at Roosevelt High School that said the proposed measure was confusing, leaving out language as to the origin of what. He added current high school texts already discuss the theory of evolution as it pertains to the origin of species. And in another chapter, it lays out possible ideas of the origin of life.
If we would separate the idea, the origin of life, from the origin of species, the way it is in our textbooks, I think we will have a lot less confusion as it exists today.
And Joe, I actually have a copy from that high school textbook in chapter 10 called The Origin of Life. And just to read you a little bit here, how did life begin? Again, a separate chapter from the Darwin Origin of Species, talking about three principal ways that they suggest. One, extraterrestrial origin. 2, creation, and 3, origin from non-living matter. So there is quite a debate that it is being mentioned in the text. It's just not in black and white that they're teaching any specific one, including, as critics urge, creationism. And I'm also told that the testimony should be wrapping up, maybe a handful of testifiers left to go. So we'll stick around here and get back to you if we hear that a vote has been taken, give you the latest on that. Back to you, Joe.
Ramsey, did the Scopes monkey trial of 1925 come up tonight at all?
Believe it or not, when we were there, we actually didn't hear anybody bringing that up. However, a high school student I spoke with yesterday mentioned that to me, and she's quite aware of the debate over this issue. So.
All right. Thanks, Ramsey. We'll keep the line open in case something breaks while we're on the air.
Absolutely.
After overwhelming public protests, the Board of Education has decided not to accept a controversial change to its science performance standards that critics say would have brought religion into the classroom. 3 hours of public testimony last night led to a unanimous vote that the board make no changes to its science standards, thus throwing out the controversial recommendation that students should learn multiple theories of origin. Board member Denise Matsumoto says she never intended her proposed change to mean creationism be taught in the classroom.
It just seemed like the consensus was that there wasn't going to be support for anything besides going back to the original language, that people didn't trust or understand the language that might have been supported.
I am very pleased. This puts an end to the controversy, and we're not going to have the educational system dragged into what is, in essence, going to be a legal battle.
All those in favor of the motion as amended say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
A surprisingly unanimous vote to keep evolution as the only theory of origin taught in Hawaii's classrooms. This after a 4-hour debate on the subject. Support from the 200 onlookers. The woman who proposed the bill says she feels defeated. Matsumoto says public testimony, overwhelmingly against creationism in the class, influenced the board.
Some of them are afraid of not getting reelected. Some of them are misinformed about what constitutes scientific thought.
And still, she voted against her own proposal.
I voted in favor of the science standards because a lot of the science standards are really good, and I didn't want to just say, well, the whole thing is bad.
Some board members say they knew before the hearing how they would vote.
I think that it belongs in another arena.
Hara, a Christian himself, says it came down to one question.
Will the standard stand by itself without that minor revision?
For him and the other 12 voting members, that answer was yes. Matsumoto says she hopes individual teachers will continue to teach alternative theories of evolution on their own.
My name is Gareth Wynne Williams. I am a professor of astronomy at University of Hawaii and chair of its astronomy graduate program. I have taught at UH for 23 years. While the central issue of today's discussion is evolution, the introduction of creationism, by that word or by some other euphemism for it, would be an affront to all the sciences. I would like to present an astronomer's perspective, followed by a personal comment. Judeo-Christian fundamentalists may believe that the universe is only 8,000 years old, but astronomers abandoned that idea nearly a century ago, as evidence poured in that the universe and everything in it has existed for several billion years. What's the difficulty with an 8,000-year-old universe? There are many. But in a nutshell, the major one is that almost all the galaxies in the universe are more than 1 million light years from us. This means that the light that is gathered by the giant telescopes on Mauna Kea must have been traveling through space for over 1 million years. The only way to reconcile what we observe with the concept of an 8,000-year-old universe is to suppose that the Almighty has deliberately filled the skies with fake photons, redundant rays of light that serve no purpose other than to confuse and mislead astronomers who have access to large telescopes. Does God really consider professional astronomers worthy of such unique attention? Asking a scientist to give equal time to creationism is like asking us to give equal time to astrology, or to the notion that the earth is flat, or to the theory that Elvis designed the Great Pyramids of Egypt. If you mandate that creationism be taught in science classes, you will be putting Hawaii in the same league as theocracies like Iran and Afghanistan. As a proud American citizen, I can think of few greater threats to our future than that the education of our children could fall victim to the religious zealotry of an eccentric minority. I hope and trust that the majority of the board has the wisdom to ensure that the state of Hawaii does not become the laughingstock of the educated world. Finally, I would like to applaud Board Member Knudsen for a public statement that she has revised her position away from allowing creationism in science classes. Willingness to change one's view in the light of new knowledge is an attitude that scientists greatly respect. Thank you.
Board Member Mitch Colley.
Somebody left their testimony. Good evening, Chairman Watanabe and members of the board. I have to say, if I really thought that this was going to be a heated debate here tonight, and I don't think it is at this point now, I believe that the evidence is pretty clear that this board is going to defeat this policy, I would probably come here and be quite rabid in my defense of the separation of state and church, which is really something that I've become known for in this community. I do have to say, though, that I think in terms of Ms. Matsumoto's attempt to bring creationism into the public classroom, I think that the problem is that she probably just didn't examine it thoroughly enough. I think that consulting with the BOE's science consultant and with the legal department could have probably prevented this from happening. And hopefully that board members will rely upon their advisors in the future so that this does not come up again. Creationism will not be allowed to be taught in Hawaii's public school science curriculum. The whole story of creationism is actually really quite a marvelous story. If you've ever had the opportunity to read the Epic of Gilgamesh or the Enuma Elish from the ancient Sumerian cultures, which is where Judeo-Christianity got its creation myths from, it really is quite a beautiful story. And it does have a place to be taught and to be told in classes on mythology and in history and in courses that are not scientifically based. Science is a beautiful thing. It is, and I think that the beauty of science is that every single premise that comes forward is always left open to challenge. Because what we're all really looking to do is to understand the truth of the matter, or to find it as the best we can. And I think the interesting thing about trying to put creationism into a science curriculum is that it's the last thing that the fundamentalists should want. Because the very moment that fundamentalism is put to the scrutiny of the scientific method, well, the result of that is not going to be very appealing to people who have deeply held beliefs that they would like to just keep to themselves. So religion is a part of our culture. The United States of America, because of the separation of state and church, is the most religious nation on this earth. Religion should be kept in the home. It should be taught in comparative religion courses so people can make up their own minds. And science is such a beautiful thing. I just want to relate one really quick story. And that is, there was a Greek mathematician named Eratosthenes who 2,300 years ago surmised that the earth was not flat as everyone thought, but that it was a sphere. And he wanted to devise some way of figuring this out, so he put sticks in the sand at various intervals and measured the shadows that were cast by these sticks. And he came to the conclusion 2,300 years ago that the earth was a sphere and that it was almost 25,000 miles in circumference. That's pretty close. And that is the beauty of science. And everyone should understand that science is not something to fear. It is something to revere. Thank you.
Aloha. I'd like to compliment the Department of Education on receiving a grade of A for the treatment of evolution by the Thomas B. Fordham Foundation in your Hawaii Content and Performance Standards. That's excellent. To receive such high marks from a national organization dedicated to academic excellence is very impressive, which makes me wonder, why would you want to change something that has done so well and that you've been commended on? Why would a board member, or the board in general, want to make this change without consulting any of the science advisors or any of the science teachers? No accredited university or college in the United States teaches alternate theories of origin. Why should the Hawaii Public Schools? Thank you.
I'll call the three names up in order so that you can prepare yourself. The next three are Brent White, Reverend Mike Young, followed by Reverend Sam Cox. Mr. White.
Good evening. My name is Brent White. I'm the legal director at the ACLU of Hawaii. I'm here to talk to you as an attorney and as legal director of the ACLU. I'm also here to voice our strong opposition to the policy or the proposal to introduce creationism or any other religious theories into the science classes of Hawaii schools. I'm not going to talk about the many philosophical and scientific and indeed common sense reasons why this policy is a bad idea, because it's plainly unconstitutional. And if you pass the policy, you will face a lawsuit and you will lose the lawsuit. To me, this discussion is thus purely academic. The Supreme Court has already held in Edwards v. Aguilera when it struck down a Louisiana law requiring that creationism be taught alongside evolution in public schools, that creation science is not science at all, but religion. The Supreme Court has also upheld lower courts' decisions striking down school curriculums designed to suggest that evolution is just a theory among theories, and that religious theories of creation are entitled to equal consideration. In another case out of Louisiana, the Supreme Court upheld a lower court decision striking down a regulation requiring only that a disclaimer be given when evolution was taught, telling students that it was only a theory and was not meant to discourage other beliefs. In other words, The issue before you tonight has already been decided by the U.S. Supreme Court. And were you to decide to include religious theories in science class, you will be in violation of well-established law. Whatever your personal beliefs, the Supreme Court has made it clear that it does not view evolution and creationism as competing scientific theories. Evolution is science. Creationism, intelligent design, or any other euphemism used to describe a multiple theory are all premised upon a belief that there is a creator or a higher power, and they are thus religion. Science belongs in the classrooms, and religion does not. I trust that the board as a whole understands this fact and will reject the ill-advised proposal before you tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Chairman Watanabe, members of the school board, I have great empathy for you. My daughter is chair of the school board of Los Angeles, and she has whined in my ear more than a few times about the kind of things that you all get subjected to. You're going to get, I assure you, a thorough education, if you ever wanted one, on evolution and creationism and the law tonight from these nice people behind me. I only ask that you keep two things in mind as you make whatever decision you end up making about this. The first is that what's at issue is the standards for science for our kids. We need our kids to have crisp, clear ideas about the basic concepts that they're going to be dealing with in science in their lives. It's not about whether the Bible is true. It's not about whether creationism is true. It isn't even about whether evolution is true. It's that evolution is a piece they need to be real clear about for the rest of their education. The second piece that I hope you'll keep in mind, and this I speak as a pastor, I don't want your teachers teaching my kids about religion. Please. They may be very good at the other things that they do. That's my biz, not theirs. Thank you.